Watch me.
All right there, you little demons. Jules here, alongside Nathan, and
Hello.
we've got a lot of things to talk about, because even though it is very, very cold here in the UK, things are hotting up thanks to the recent Xbox drop, which, for the most part, was a tepid sludge of excitement. But there was one thing that got my dial of destiny standing to attention, and that was the reveal of a brand new Indiana Jones game. Are you excited about it, Nathan? Are you keen as a green bean?
Do you know, I've got to say, I'm not the biggest Indiana Jones movie fan, if I'm honest, but I am excited for this. You know, I think MachineGames are the best company to take it on. No one punches a Nazi quite like them. So, you know, I'm not like incredibly excited for it, but I'm definitely going to play it. I think it looks slick. I'm always a sucker, strangely, for first-person fist fights. I don't know what it is about them, but they feel very next gen to me. What do you think?
That is right. Okay, you and I are coming from completely different sides of the coin on this one here, because I cannot think of anything worse than trying to fight somebody in first person. It feels like I'm fighting in a goddamn dream. I hate it, my man. Like when we I think back
in first person,
to
not
Skyrim.
just real life.
No, I just think about think back to like Morrowind and Skyrim, where you're just wafting your sword and eventually it just falls over and goes, guess I'm dead now. But hopefully we won't have that to worry about, because as Nathan pointed out, MachineGames are heading up this brand new Indiana Jones joint. And, well, I gotta say, their track record kind of speaks for itself when it comes to a lot of chaotic combat, because they were helming the previous Wolfenstein games before Youngblood came along and ruined it all. So I'm pretty excited about this, and I'm also excited for Todd Howard, not necessarily about Todd Howard, for the fact that he finally gets to, in his own words, make a game that he has been dreaming about for decades at this point. And it's quite refreshing to see somebody this far into their tenure as a video game, a voice of the video game generation, being able to say, I get to make my passion project now. And you know what? Good for him. I mean, yes, maybe some of the prior games that he's helmed up have not been up to scratch, but maybe this will be the one that really cements him as Todd Howard, the guy that was right.
I mean, I'm fascinated by Todd Howard because I think, you know, I didn't love Starfield, okay, I've got to be honest, but I think all Bethesda games have this charm about them that no other company kind of can seem to hit quite like they do. But no matter how many games come out and maybe leave me a little bit lukewarm, when he talks about what his next game is, he always gets me so hyped. He talks with such enthusiasm and love. And I mean, the older the man gets, the younger he looks, which makes me think that he kind of, maybe he like feeds off the disappointment of gamers, a bit like how Dracula feeds off the blood of virgins.
So there we go.
And a lot of those gamers probably are virgins. So
I say today's video headline is Todd Howard, Secret Vampire. But to be honest, I totally agree with you. Watching him sort of get people spun up in the hype frenzy is similar to Peter Molyneux, and I'll leave that comparison right there for people to tie their own loose ends. We'll leave that for another day.
No, I'm going to come in on that because I do feel like Peter Molyneux, I think he hypes you up with like these weird gameplay mechanics that never really come to fruition, and I think with Todd it is always
what are you talking about?
Enthusiasm.
Combat on one button? How could that be a bad idea? Combat on one button? Come on.
Did he not also claim invention for the dog in Fable 2? I think I remember him talking about we've got this brand new thing, it's called the dog. Famously,
Peter Molyneux, inventor of the dog. But let's go back and start barking at the moon about this brand new Indiana Jones game, because there was actually a lot of people that were super hyped on this. And to be honest, you look at how the action is presented in this game, feels very sort of like Call of Duty, heavy on the set pieces, quite a lot of like very bombastic, explosive combat, and I'm quite keen for that. However, one of the first things, and because it's the internet, of course there was a criticism within the first 10 seconds of anything launching on there, was why is this game not a third-person action-adventure game? And that is actually quite an interesting talking point, as yes, an Indiana Jones game has the potential to be amazing. Everyone remembers the original Xbox games, and obviously the best Indiana Jones game, Lego Indiana Jones. But to put it as a first-person game, I do find that as quite strange, because first-person whipping Ew. I'm not going to lie, it didn't look that great. The whip looked like it was some sort of... Do you remember those old toy green plastic snakes that you'd get? Hold, and they wiggled at the... It kind of looked like one of them. And I was a bit like, thought we'd moved away to this. Realistic whip physics. Where are we at?
Good luck to the editor for finding that visual.
Matt's just there pulling his head out. Why, Jules? Why?
Why? I think it feels like video games have always kind of been chasing Indiana Jones. And I think back when people maybe didn't take games as seriously and the fidelity of games maybe wasn't up to scratch with what they are today, they created their own, so we had Lara Croft, we had Resident Evil, which was very much the kind of, Dawn of the Dead films. And so I think over the years, gaming has had its own Indiana Jones, so it feels quite strange now and quite full circle. Indiana Jones in the full circle.
Please, we're done with the films. No more. I hate to interrupt you on this point here, but it's just a case of, I was saying to you before we jumped on camera. If there's one thing that kills the hype of Indiana Jones, it's when Indiana Jones actually releases content. Let's face it, the last two films that have come out have been woefully underwhelming compared to what people were expecting. And I think that people love the memory of Indiana Jones far more than actually watching the franchise evolve. So setting this game, what is it? Is it between Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Last Crusade? Is it around there, or is it just after? I can't remember where they said
Raiders and Temple of Doom.
So it's basically
is that right?
At the start of whatever.
Temple of Doom's
right
a prequel, isn't it?
Wow,
we are the two best people to be talking about this. What's his name again?
Indiana Bones over here. He's basically, it's at the start of his adventuring career. And I feel like that is a very important distinction, because not only do we get a young, Troy Baker doing a Harrison Ford impression, which is spot on, by the way, but it means that we are kind of removing ourselves from the fantastical alien elements that maybe were introduced in the latter films, which I'm totally here for. If we can keep things more grounded as a Ark of the Covenant can be, obviously, then I feel like we're going to be up for something very special. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that the plot is, this is going to be the insider tip here with Jules Gill, right? Okay. The plot is going to be, Indiana Jones goes to some remote area of the world. He finds a treasure, but here's the twist. The bad guys get the treasure from him. He then has to get a ragtag team together, usually comprising of either some female companion that he's accrued along the way, or some sidekick that will presumably die in the third act. And then we have a nice showdown where the said item is used against the people who have already claimed it for themselves, and credits roll. Now, I feel that's a bit groundbreaking. Bit groundbreaking right there.
You better be careful that George Lucas and Todd Howard aren't watching this, because they'll be taking notes.
I'm surprised.
Wow, that sounds like a great plot.
To be honest,
remember that for later.
If George Lucas had a bit more sway in things like he used to do, it probably would be about 4 hours of trade disputes about how the Nazis were shipping food across the border or something like that. That's where it would be. So,
as long as Jar Jar Binks was there, I'd be happy.
He is the key, though. So that's the thing.
That's it.
I mean, to be fair though, let's just go back and cycle through to the gameplay that we've seen.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of dramatic face punching. Very interested in that. Again, the whip physics looking a bit ropey. Yeah. Excuse the obvious pun right there. But I am overall quite impressed with what I've seen in terms of the set piece design. Not super impressed with the graphics. Maybe I'm being a bit of a pedant on this.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's a slight cartoon element to it, which I think is on purpose, which I can kind of get into. In certain kind of angles and screenshots and bits of the footage, I thought it looked amazing. And then in others, I was maybe a little bit unsure. But I kind of wonder if it's also one of those games that in motion, as you play it, will look better than kind of just being shown it like this.
It's really weird, isn't it? Because you really shouldn't ever try and stylize stuff that has the Nazis. I mean, it's like, what are you trying to say with that one there? Are we not going to approach the subject of Nazis while also including quite a lot of them? It's just a bit of a strange one. But
I wonder if the people at MachineGames are just, if you ever just get quite tired of Nazis. If you're like, I'd really like to do another villain.
Unfortunately, much like the betterment, most of mankind, I don't think you can ever tire from punching a good old Nazi in the face. So there we go. So just keep punching Nazis, kids. If you heard like that, I'm just going to put that one out there, right?
But it's interesting what you were saying about it being third person, because part of me thinks, I think obviously because it's MachineGames, first person. Sorry, I'll start that again. I think it's really interesting what you're saying about it being first person though, because I think that's what MachineGames do very well. But also when you've had Tomb Raider and you've had Uncharted with Nathan Drake, and they have done that, and it kind of feels like they have both done Indiana Jones's greatest hits. I think to come along, it does feel a little bit like, okay, here is the original, here is Indiana Jones, but in some ways he has to do things differently because it's already been done with.
He has to basically take a look at his imitators and then not try to copy them.
Exactly.
And it's a bit of a strange one because by putting things in a first-person perspective, we are emphasizing the visceral combat experience more than anything else. So we are going to see probably a lot more sort of like, well, fist-fighting gameplay. But I do worry in the sense that this was coupled by a statement where the developers were saying this is going to be, you're not going to use guns that often, that it's going to be much more whip-focused and fighting. And that, to me, screams of something that's like, oh, gosh, guys, you better hope that those mechanics are put in place well, because if we're not shooting people, but you're putting us into a first-person combat scenario, then, oh boy, that's a lot that is resting on that whip physics, you know?
Totally. That's what made me quite excited, though, I think. And I could totally understand people being like, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I thought this was going to be a shooter. But I think I feel quite excited that it's not going to be like Wolfenstein. It's not going to be like a typical... This isn't going to be Call of Duty Indiana Jones edition. This potentially could be its own thing, and so I'm quite excited that it's maybe more focused on fist fights and whipping and puzzles.
Well, you know, that is something that could be the big difference, is that maybe what we were shown in the trailer was a scant selection of the action, and it was going to be more thoughtful puzzle-based stuff, because people tend to forget that a lot of Indiana Jones is about atmosphere and puzzle solving. Those are the actual things that I remember the most, not necessarily about the amount of fights you got into. So as long as we get...
And saying that though, Jules, we clearly have not watched enough Indiana Jones, so who knows, maybe.
Oh, trust me, I watched that fourth one with Shia LaBeouf, and I watched too much. I did my time, okay?
I just hope Chewbacca's there. It's not an Indiana Jones experience for me if Chewbacca's not there.
Please, why are you doing this to me? Well, I'm trying to stay positive on this game. I'm trying not to understand. So yeah, in long story short, this Indiana Jones game that's coming out by MachineGames is potentially going to be something a bit different to the norm. However, if it does end up just being a generic, like, trope action game, it won't impress anyone from the fan base that way, and it won't move the genre forward or the franchise itself. But if it ends up going the other way and tried to become like an Uncharted third-person adventure, people would just say that it's copying from that. So it's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here. I don't know how this this type of game wins.
Also, I think the thing that we kind of touched on this earlier, but one of the things I'm very interested in is the last Indiana Jones film did not make a lot of money.
No.
And I think a lot of people quite high up in the entertainment industry think that Indiana Jones is a much more bankable franchise than it maybe actually is. So I wonder if the reaction from the last film has people maybe a bit worried about how this will do, because clearly I don't think it has the draw that a lot of kind of execs think it does. You know, there are a generation of gamers out there who, you know, don't want to play an Indiana Jones game.
They're far removed from something that's a quality product, I think, and it's like, it's not the same as Star Wars in a way, because, you know, as much as the last three films maybe didn't wow over audiences across the globe, but they did still have a huge impact when it came to revenue and turning over like a shift in units. So it's always going to stay in the public consciousness. Where Indiana Jones, it does feel like a B tier sort of franchise nowadays.
Yeah. I think so, which is funny because it was on the same level. I think when you hear people like Todd Howard talk about Indiana Jones, it is, you know, it was this huge, huge franchise, but it does over the years, I think, seem to have just slipped below Star Wars. And yeah, we'll see.
Well, think about it this way: like, if you were to talk to me about somebody who raids tombs, goes over and starts beating up the local populace, then I think of Uncharted first, and I think of Indiana Jones second. So maybe the crown has moved over. But at least Troy Baker's going to be helming up both franchises, so it's a win-win for him. One of the three voice actors in the community. So there we go. That has been our thoughts on Indiana Jones: Rise of the Bones. Let us know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. Are you excited about this game? Are you whipped up into a frenzy? Or are you basically just going to push over the golden idol and say, nah, sandbag it, eh? See, that's a little. See, I know the movies.
Beautiful.
I know the movies. Anyway, I better run off before this boulder called the time. Anyway, right, let's get out of it. Right, okay, so I've been Jules. He's been Nathan. Thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. You can follow us on our social medias here and stay tuned for more daily gaming content here on FGS. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go on, you cheeky little devils. Go on, do it. Kiss on the top of the head for you. We're out of here. Peace out. Bye.